beautiful souls. Welcome to another episode of the Paladina Show. And I'm very excited that we have a wonderful guest today. We have Fabienne Marneau, and she is known as the Ghostbuster. And she's going to explain a little bit more on that. But she is an amazing certified hypnotherapist with over 40 years of experience, okay, and also in different energy healing modalities. She's also a spiritual counselor, transformational mentor, and she's going to go over everything else that she does as well. So, welcome, Fabienne, to the show.
Thank you, Christine.
And now you are based now, originally you started, I mean, you're born and raised in France and you started out there for quite some time, but you've been in California, I think now for the last, is it like 38
For
to 40 years?
over 40 years now. Yep.
Okay. All
Time
right.
flies.
Okay. Yes, I know. That's what my mom used to say. Time flies, right? Every year. And what's it? So this is very fascinating to me. When did you start? I mean, understand why you call yourself the Ghostbuster, but can you now explain to people that who've never been introduced to you before, what do you mean by being the Ghostbuster?
All right. So there's several reasons. One of them is that I was born medium. So that's not something that I necessarily talk about a lot because um, it doesn't really make that much difference, but that's who I am. I was born medium, and um, since I'm a child, I was able to see things that are normally not necessarily visible for everybody, and I could have a sense of things. Now, when I started professionally working with hypnotherapy, what happened is that it actually developed my ability to connect with the other side. To give you an example, I remember one client, she was in my chair. As I walked in to the room where she was, I saw somebody behind her very clearly. And during the conversation I had with her, I said, well, there's a young man that is with you right now, and he very much wants to communicate with us. Do you have an idea of who he is? And then she said, oh, yeah, I know who he is. And it was a friend that actually killed himself in front of her
Oh, wow.
when she was younger. And he was like a ghost around her. So during the session, I helped her to make peace with him, to let him know that he could go to the light, that she didn't resent him for doing it, that she understood, and that he was free to go. Because what happened, when I find out, it's a very often what we call ghosts. They are not ghosts, they are spirit. I mean, we never die, we are
Right.
always alive. It's just that it's a dimension, and a choice of where we go, where we can keep growing and expressing ourselves and all that. We have choices. But very often, if there is a strong emotional bond with something that is what we call an unfinished business, then like this young man was not giving himself permission to go to the light. And it's not because he killed himself that I really don't believe there is, those terrible hell and heaven. A, God loves us regardless of anything, and everything is part of the evolution of our soul. So we don't have to have that judgment idea. And I help a lot of people who had that concept, who had kids who commit suicide and because they were very religious, had a hard time accepting it. And I was able to make them understand, or at least see that maybe that was not what it was, that it was more like a very sensitive soul who couldn't deal with the harshness of Mother Earth. This planet is not a happy place. And so anyway, to go back to the young man behind my client, during our session, he was able to go to the light. And I saw her one more time for another topic that she had that she needed healing with. And then I never had to see her again. She was fine, free from that burden, because it was a burden for her to feel his energy around her. Then she
Oh,
was free to move on with her own life either. It free everybody.
right. I actually had a spiritual mentor, Reverend Scott Sherman, a little over 20 years ago. And that was something that was very enlightening to me. had been more spiritual as I got older. And what was interesting to me was I thought, okay, I still didn't quite believe until that point in reincarnation, like the soul is, you can come back and all that. I just still was a little bit on the fence on that. And then he gave me this wonderful book by, that you may know, Many Lives, Many Masters, Dr. Brian Weiss. And that really opened up things. And then I got more into understanding that and already knowing some of my past lives and things like that. And I find it very interesting as someone with
Yeah.
also a degree in psychology, how people can actually have that trauma from either a current situation in this life or even from a past life. So you must have experience with that as well, correct?
Yes, exactly. And then, so you asked me, why I call myself the Ghostbuster. So that was one of the reasons. And the second reason is that through a personal experience of healing, or rather of a strong emotion that didn't belong to me at all, an abandonment issue that I felt, that was the origin of discovering that we can carry emotions from our ancestral. And that was my grandmother, actually. And then when I realized that, then I started working on clearing ancestral lineage patterns. And that's what I do now, mainly with my clients. And it's so powerful because I would say 90%, or if it's not 99%, of what is going on in our life that are limiting our freedom, our success, our happiness, and even damaging our health have nothing to do with us, but is a bleed over of energy, of mindset, of emotions that are coming from our ancestral lineage patterns. And so that's the reason why, I joke saying that I am the Ghostbuster because I help my clients to clear those generational patterns, rewire their brain programming, and release stored cellular memories um, through those profound healing journey. Uh,
Okay. And can you give us an example of how, I guess with some people it depends on the situation, right? If they can do it in only one or two or more sessions,
oh
or if they
yeah,
need to come to you repeatedly for a little while to really figure
thank you
things
for
out.
thank you for asking that question because it's a very good question. And to be straightforward, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. Um, for the same topic, the same exact emotion that is related to an event that is in the past, only one healing is necessary. One session will be fine. But what happened is that there is layers. So, for example, you live. A clear example, you cannot be successful with your business. For example, you reach plateau. I work a lot on that because it's a recurrent issue that people are willing to invest their time and money in because they want to be successful, right?
Right.
But if you have a block that is coming, let's say from your father's side, of a trauma, a dramatic situation, something that comes from that, we're going to identify it and clear it. But we may have another issue from the mother side, or even still from the father side, but from another ancestral person, or from our own soul, like you mentioned before, incarnation, because that is separate. We also have our personal evolution of soul. And um, again, we don't need to have a belief, a religious belief or anything like that, because we can be very open to that. I'm a follower of, personally, of Albert Einstein, who said that we don't know, we cannot understand time and space, and that it probably doesn't exist anyway. So if somebody like him can say that, I think it's humble enough to say that we have no clue what that means.
Mhm.
Time and space is something that we experience because we are on planet Earth and we follow law of physics that are attached to planet Earth. But if we consider that we are a soul, what I totally believe and feel, we are a soul, that soul is eternal. That soul can never die because nothing energetically can die. It transforms, everything transforms. So your soul never die, evaluate where it goes, what it does. That's a mystery. But I find that with the work I'm doing, I help at least to clear the things that are limiting our freedom, our success, our possibilities in the present moment. I always start with the present moment. Like I never do, you mentioned past life regression. I don't like people who are asking me, who are telling me, I would like to do a past life regression um, uh, because I'd like to know who I was. That doesn't interest me. Ask me an issue you have. We'll ask your soul to give us a story that is related to it. But I don't want to manipulate your soul, your mind, or whatever. I want to receive the information and I want to share it with you. You'll have to discover it on your own. Be always careful to have people put their own imprint in you, telling you, oh, you used to be Cleopatra. You used to be this. You used to be that. Everybody is saying the same stories. And it's like, no, don't go there. Go to your own feeling. And sometimes it's not necessarily a fact, it can be also an archetype. Like I know I am connected to Merlin. Merlin is a magician, but Merlin is an alchemist. Merlin is a very powerful person. My dad believed in Merlin, and he was a very rational person.
Hmm.
Um, there is a places where we believe he is buried, and a lot of people go on his, in the forest where he is.
Hmm.
But there's also people who believe that it did never exist. So it doesn't really matter. It can be also just an archetype that represent the magic, the power of wanted the good because he was from the light and his master was from the light, but he also had a master, his master had a master who was not from the light. So there is conflict also, in magic about what is the white magic and magic that is unnecessary because it's not using the right energies, right?
Right.
So it goes back to us. We always have the choice. And if you want, I can share an image that I use a lot with my clients. I love that. To consider that we have two angels on our shoulders, right? We have an angel, let's say on the left side, that I would call the ego mind. The ego mind wants our safety. It doesn't mean he doesn't want to hurt us, but he wants to control us because he has fear. So that's the energy of fear. So what I recommend to people to do when they have a problem or they want an answer to a question is to talk to the ego and say, thank you, ego, for sharing your thoughts, but you know it's coming from fear. And you can say, but I choose to listen to, and then you turn to the other side of, on your shoulder, where it's your higher self, angel. And the higher self is never concerned about fear. It's all about light and love and expansion and trust and all that. And then you can say, I choose to listen to you. Please tell me what you think about the situation. And then you make a choice. You make a decision. But you can never kill the ego. So it doesn't make any sense to be aggressive and mean to the ego. The ego is part of you until you die. And respecting the ego is very important because the ego has his value too. Like I said, it tried to keep you safe. It worries about you. It's like an old brother that wants you to come back at home at before midnight because it wants you to be safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we can deal with it that way, but we still have the choice to listen the inspiration and the guidance from our higher self.
It's interesting that you point that out because I learned that in a business mentoring class many, many years ago. That yes, ego, we shouldn't be feeding our ego to control us, especially in business decisions or taking risks
Oh,
and falling in love and things like that.
right.
And it's very interesting that I started having dreams about the ego and it yelling in my face as an old woman, and then me trying to throw it to the ground, but it still couldn't go away. It became very small, but it still was there. And then I was talking to the coach. She says, well, you can't get rid of your ego. Because having a
That's
little
right.
bit of ego helps, is the confidence, is the assertiveness. You still need a little bit of that, right?
Right.
But not to control you. So you said that's why you couldn't get rid of her. She
Right.
just went small because your ego has to stay with you. Some of your ego is, and that's very interesting that you
Yeah.
that you do bring that up.
And you also have to remember that what you resist persists. So you don't want to resist the ego. You want to let it flow, express itself. And I like the idea of saying, thank you, ego, for sharing.
Right,
Like that, you acknowledge it. You don't shut it down. You don't aggress it. You don't resist it. You acknowledge it.
right.
And then you make up your decision with what you feel would be more appropriate to follow.
And so then, Fabienne, how do you, because I see you have so many wonderful testimonials of different people that, have had some sort of anxiety over something and you've helped them very quickly to resolve it.
Right.
So many people, especially, and of course, I always recommend people don't watch the news, don't, get yourself immersed in a lot of negative information out there that you can't control anyway, right?
Right.
How do you address somebody that has, say, like a social media anxiety? They're being fed so much information and they're overwhelmed. They don't know how to deal with it. What do you recommend to them?
I think what you said first, to limit their exposure to it, to maybe one or twice a day, if they want to find out what's going on, to watch the news, for a short
Right.
time. So just they are informed, they need to be informed. I mean, we live, in a society where we would look really stupid if we don't know the Pope died or that we have a new president or something like that. I mean, you need to know there's a war somewhere or. But not to be all day long checking on it, following the news. Limit your time, control your time. And when you do it, I have an exercise, and actually, it's one of the gifts that I'm giving you today to everybody. It's
Okay.
a 5 minute instant peace guided meditation that you can do. And once you practice it several times, it become a tool that you can use all the time, and that would protect you, that would keep you in the light. So protected from negativity, from your own negativity and from the negativity of the world. So that's my 5 minute instant peace. And that's a gift that we'll give at the
Oh,
end.
that's
One
so
of the gifts.
wonderful, Fabienne.
I
Thank you
have
so
three,
much.
I
We're
have
going to be
three
posting
gifts.
that. People are going to be seeing this on the captioning, and also you'll maybe actually even say the link later so that we can get it that way as well.
Right.
So this is interesting to me. The subject of, because you have a specialty in this as well, post-traumatic syndrome, which used to be called post-traumatic syndrome disorder. And
Disorder. Yep.
you mentioned something very interesting, and I still see a bunch of websites still calling it with the disorder, the word disorder. Why is it that we should be dropping the word disorder and only calling it
Well,
post-traumatic
post-traumatic syndrome.
stress?
Stress. It came from the military, actually. I worked a lot with military people who obviously are very exposed to that. And what happened is that if they are labeled as having PTSD, they they can eventually be removed from their function. And I worked with a lot of leaders, colonel, people highly ranked, Marines, very highly ranked, that were in charge of men. And they told me if doing therapy, I mentioned I have PTSD, I won't be able to be doing what I am doing right now.
Oh,
They'll remove
wow.
me. Yeah.
So if it gets
So is
posted in a
it
report, then they won't be able, I see.
right? So initially, I think that was the reason. And then the second reason is that they felt that if it's considered as a disease, a psychiatrist considers that it cannot be healed very often.
Right.
Therefore, it's a label. You are labeled as being disabled, having a disability, having a big issue, a sickness. And they don't want that because they believe that with help, they can be cured
And and, and I'm
of
I'm a
that.
full believer you can heal
And I
anything.
do.
So I
And
I
I,
completely agree with
yeah,
that.
I have amazing result with that. I have several techniques that I use for PTS. that we used to call PTSD. And I have total recovery with that. What also is phenomenal, and I'm glad that the psychiatric world is finally recognizing that speech therapy doesn't help at all. If it anything, it hurts people who have PTS even more when we do speech therapy. Because I take the image, if you have dust in front of you, you take the dust in your hands, right? And you say, oh, I'm going to breathe the dust and I'm going to feel better because I have an allergy with dust. You're not going to get better by, you know, smelling the dust. I am allergic to dust. I mean, not terribly,
Right,
but I am.
right.
And that's why I don't do my cleaning. I don't dust my home. I have somebody doing that for me because it's not something enjoyable for me. Why am I going to expose myself to that? But just to say, the emotion, you're not going to keep reliving the trauma and again and talk about it and imagine it and that. So the technique I'm using completely bypass this. So you don't have to suffer again. And that's why in my website, I said that I believe that healing should never hurt. Okay, it should only make you feel better. Now, during the healing process, sometimes we have 3 days of adjustment. That's normal. Okay, because body needs to attune itself and regulate and harmonized. So sometimes we have 3 days where we can be unsettled until we feel completely cleared. Okay, but we're not talking about having a tantrum, an emotional breakdown, or anything like that. It really has to be gentle. It's strong, permanent, but enjoyable at the end. Not something we have to, oh my gosh, I need to speak to that girl again about my trauma. No,
Right.
that
Right.
won't
I
help.
had it was
That won't
interesting
help.
for me that you mentioned that. I'm so glad that you talk about that it shouldn't hurt because I'm the same belief when people are going through detoxification that especially how I learned it from Dr. Staninger, it should be a gentle process. It should not be painful at all because
Right,
you're already going through quite a bit of pain already,
right,
right?
right, right.
Physically. And on what you're doing, it's
Absolutely.
either the emotional mental side of
Right.
it.
And
And I've
and
had
and
people say to me, they went to a doctor, they got these harsh medications to detoxify, and it really was traumatic for
yeah,
them.
yeah,
And I,
yeah.
yeah,
No, you are totally right. And if you may, I'm going to mention something that I believe very strongly. We need to remember the body is not the enemy. The body is telling us about a story that we need to pay attention about. So when we are sick, it's the body that say, "Hey, there's an
that's
issue
right.
here. Take care of me because I'm having a problem." But the problem is an emotion. The problem is something that happened in the past. That's something that we need to clear. And then when we do that, then they can work with you and have an amazing result. But unfortunately, if they don't take care of the emotion that is behind it, the real cause, then they won't heal. What happened is that the body is going to create another disease. So they are going to have migraines, then they'll have intestinal problem, then they may have a heart attack. You know what I mean? It's going to
Oh, yes.
circulate. It's going to
I've
circulate.
spoken to a couple of different clients that continue to want to worry and stress about EMF, 5G. They want to
Yeah,
stress
yeah,
about all these different things. And
yeah.
then detoxifying the physical you still have to be emotionally, you know what I mean,
Sound and
accepting
clear.
and not
Yes,
worry and fearful. So it's very, it- it's very disappointing because then the person doesn't really want to heal because they just really want to create this,
right, right,
trauma loop
right,
just on
right.
themselves.
Right.
So,
And also we need to remember that is also what we call secondary gain from being sick. We always have to address that. Why do you want to be sick? And they'll say, no, I don't want to be sick. Well, let's test it because maybe you do. And what
right,
are the advantage of being sick? Oh, you are not doing anything. You are supported by other people. You don't need to justify to be a failure. Okay, so yeah, there is many layers that
right.
need to be addressed on everything we do. Yeah,
Right. But what I just find it really refreshing to have met you, Fabienne, because I'm seeing like I think he was a colonel. He's got this testimony on your website and
right.
how I mean amazing it was for him to to be able to be free of that.
Right.
And
He had what he called the bad dreams. He couldn't even say the word nightmare. He never was able to say nightmare. I made
oh
him,
wow.
to me, say nightmare, but he couldn't. He called that bad dreams. It's to tell you how much traumatized he was by that, you know.
Wow.
And of course, he had PTSD, you know, from his experience as a military person, but also in his childhood. And that's something that he was really surprised that when I met him, I knew that something was coming from his childhood. His dad was an alcoholic, and you know, he had to first heal from that, and then we did all the other healing. But that was beautiful, beautiful. But I have a lot
But I
of
do
good.
agree with you. I had a psychotherapist, a master's degree one, and thought I needed, you know, as part of my job, counseling because I was going through a painful divorce. I never thought I was going to get divorced. And then started going back into now, and I've resolved, I mean, I'm a very, you know, done all sorts of my own self-development. So I really didn't need to. And she just wanted to keep going back to my childhood. And it was very painful. It was very painful doing those sessions. As you were saying, it shouldn't be painful.
No, no.
And that's why I'm glad to introduce you to my audience because uh, I stopped going to that person because they were not letting me heal. That was really driving me crazy. They just
Uh,
wanted to
uh,
keep bringing up stuff that was already resolved, and
yeah, and you know,
that's not
as we
healing.
right,
So,
and as you speak, if you may, I just checked, but that childhood experience it didn't even belong to you. It was connected to ancestral lineage. So that person did hurt you by making you talk about it. We didn't need to talk about it. We could go straight to the root that was that was on your father's side of your
mhm,
ancestral lineage, sweetie. So you see, it's a waste of time and energy to make somebody suffer from something that
right,
doesn't even belong to them. You know, it
right,
had nothing to do with you
right,
as a human being, as a, you know what I mean? So, so yeah, it's very powerful to do those stuff. Go to the root, clear it, and be done with it.
right,
Hallelujah.
exactly,
You know, why not?
right. So, so Fabienne, we probably want to bring you back for another session at some point because I remember you had also actually emailed me on a couple of other interesting topics. But for this session, I want to, you know, kind of wrap up. But please tell our viewers and listeners, how do they get in touch with you?
Okay, so it's really easy because they can go on my website, www.fabienne, Fabienne, Marneau, Marneau.com. And on my website, they in the menu, they'll see three gifts. Click on the gift and use the three gifts. I'm offering three gifts to everybody who goes on my website. One of them is the 5 minutes instant peace. Everybody can use that. Protection, beautiful
Sure.
guided meditation, and it's both a video and an audio. I recommend to first see the video because it's beautiful and inspiring, and then later on to use it as an audio until it becomes an automatism. They'll learn the technique, they'll do it on their own. Okay. And then the second gift is a one-on-one talk with me, a personal call with me that I call strategy call because your life needs to be strategized. We need to know what's going on. And in one call, I'll be able to, to help you unveil the root cause of whatever bother you in your life. And it doesn't have to be something that bothers you, it's something that you may want to improve,
Hmm.
simply,
Right.
having a better
Because
relationship, better
also,
business,
right,
yeah.
Fabienne, you've also been a business coach, correct?
I am a strategist. I am a business strategist. I help very successful people to be even more successful by um, keeping or developing their business without increasing the amount of time they need to work on it. So you can save time and energy and be even more successful. And I love helping people do that. Yeah. And
Wonderful.
then the
Oh,
third gift
Oh,
Gosh,
third one. Okay, great.
yeah. These three gifts. What is this third one? Oh my gosh. Oh, my Money Story Masterclass. It's a free masterclass you can register to, and that would explain how ancestral lineage works, why you reach maybe financial plateau, and how you can multiply your income in a very easy way.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah, so those
Okay,
are the
well,
three
Sabine,
gifts.
I so grateful that we did
And
meet. Okay,
if you
in one
have
of
a
the
second,
JV partnership classes, and looking forward to continuing to have you on the show and continue working with you as a colleague.
excellent. Thank you so much again for inviting me.
Okay, take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.